you're all doing well, and here we are for our fourth class. 4 lessons in is a good time to save the controversial stuff. Want to begin by thanking our core sponsor is Nancy Trieste. Is she on? No, okay. Beth and Eli Morocco. Hello, Beth and Eli, if you're there. And Toby and Larry Fox. Here we are for lesson 4. And lesson 4, okay, we got some nice pictures showing up over here. Lesson 4 is titled Occupied with Peace. We'll be talking about the concept of land for peace, two-state solution, Palestinian state, and all that good stuff. So BBC once did a little news piece. They went to the Kotel, and there was a Jew, a Jerusalemite Jew. And there's a certain stereotype, a traditional stereotype of the Jerusalem Jew. Jerusalem Jews who've lived in Jerusalem for hundreds of years, they even have a very specific way of dressing. So my aunt got married to a Jerusalemite. Till today, it's like a different religious frock coat. Like it's very unique to it's called the Yerushalmi Jews. So one of these Jerusalemite Jews, he's praying by the wall, and the BBC interviewer stops him and says, "Can we speak to you for a few minutes?" He says, "Sure." He says, so the reporter asks, "Hello, Sheldon. Good evening." The reporter asks, "How often do you come here?" He says, "I come here 3 times a day. 3 times a day I walk to the wall. I live right outside of the old city. I pray 3 times. 3 times a day you come here. So what do you pray for?" "What do I pray for? I pray for all good stuff. For health in my family, for happiness, for success. And I pray for peace," right? Peace is a very big part of the Jewish prayers. I pray for peace, especially here in Israel. There should be peace between the Jews, the Palestinians, the Arabs. We should all get along. The reporter says, "No, so how does it feel to be here praying every single day at the Kotel?" So the Jew answers simply, "It feels like I'm talking to a wall." He didn't mean it cynically. But that's where we are. Today, every single year that goes by, especially in the past few years, you really sense this disillusionment. People are really feeling like, we're doing this for too long. We're beating a dead horse. Just peace, two-state solution again and again and again. And even just now, between last week's class and now, there was another flare-up in Gaza, and thank God it was a pretty quick. And I'm not really familiar with all the details, but it seems like it was a preemptive strike, right? So that goes back to what we spoke about in the second class. Okay, so that's interesting. So Israel preemptively did what they had to do, and compared to any other flare-up in Gaza, this was really clean. Okay, so all right, huh?
It prevented a anti-tank weapon from shooting out a train or a bus.
Oh, okay. That was okay. I didn't know that. Wow.
Palestinian jihad was planning that attack.
So they went and did it preventative. Okay, so that's unique for. Okay, but in any case, we're going to talk about this issue, and I want to just mention, trigger warning. How it's a heated topic. People are very passionate about this topic. It's a difficult and sensitive issue to discuss, and it's very difficult. Hello, to discuss it without voicing an opinion. Can I claim to really be standing up over here and be doing an hour-and-a-half class without being biased, without siding to one side versus the other? And history has proven that people get very worked up when we discuss this topic. So I want to say that this is not going to be a 3-minute, when you speak to the media, and I have a little bit of experience with it, it's a whole different experience. The art of getting your punch in 90 seconds, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, that soundbite, and that quick media, that's a certain art. But, that's like a hit piece. You just have to say your thing, and you hope that it has the strongest punch that you're able to get there within just a few seconds. I don't want to do that today. This is going to be in-depth. We're going to be doing a journey. Let's take a journey through this issue. Let's try to shelve our preconceived notions, our prejudices, whatever we already think we understand, whatever our position is, and let's really explore this. So we'll talk a little bit more, we'll set up the class a little bit more after the video. I want to begin with the video, the class video, lesson video, which is really more like a mini documentary each week, which will introduce us to this concept. We all know there's something called, see, that's part of the problem over here. One of the reasons why this topic is so sensitive is because even the terminology you use already frames the whole issue. Is it occupied territories or is it captured territories? Very big difference.
No.
Is it Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria, or is it the West Bank? Are you giving back land or are you giving up land, ceding land? These things change the whole narrative. If it's occupied territories, that means that Israel has a moral obligation to give it back. And every single day that they're not giving it back, then they are illegal occupiers. If it is captured territory, that means that no, it's theirs. They captured it in a war of defense, and now they have the upper hand. They could use it as a bargaining chip at the negotiating table. So it changes the whole narrative. So when you read an article, for example, about what's generally considered occupied territories, the moment you find one of these terminologies, if they call it occupied territories, it's already not an objective article. They've already framed the issue. Israel is occupying Palestinian territory. So that's just part of the sensitivity of this issue. Let's try to keep it as neutral as possible and go through a journey, specifically from a Jewish lens, into the issue. Okay, one last note. It would be easy for me as a rabbi, and I've told this to you before, that there's a famous line: if you want to keep your friends, just don't talk about two things, religion and politics. And I'm already down on one. So I'm really risking it all by going into politics, and I've been burnt there before, where I wasn't careful enough and somebody heard something that they misunderstood, and I'm very careful to not talk about politics, but and they'll never speak to me again. It's happened. So I stay away, and especially as somebody who tries representing Judaism and politics, let's keep them separate. People should know that whatever their political beliefs are, they should be able to trust that they could trust me and learn Judaism with me, or explore Judaism with me, and do a mitzvah with me. But we cannot, in good conscience, have a course about the Six-Day War and not talk about these territories. This is one of the biggest legacies of the war. People don't realize that. The whole issue of either the captured territories, liberated territories, let's just call it the territories. That's what's called in Israel, the shtachim. Shtachim means territories. So the territories. This is all a result from the 1967 Six-Day War. The whole issue is 55 years old. So here's a video which will walk us through this issue. We'll continue the story of the battle of the Six-Day War, and then we'll discuss. Want to get the lights, Lance? All right, I'm sorry, you're sitting just right there. Here we go.
June 1967. Israel was besieged by three brutal enemies and had to fight them all at once: Egypt, Jordan, Syria. At stake was the survival of a nation, the life of every Jewish citizen of Israel. The greatest threat came from Egypt, where the match was horribly lopsided. Egypt deployed 100,000 troops in the Sinai Peninsula, while Israel had mobilized 45,000. In machinery and firepower as well, the numbers were heavily unbalanced in Egypt's favor. Israel's Air Force executed a preemptive attack, striking hard in Egypt's own territory. In 2 furious hours, Egypt's Air Force virtually ceased to exist, and its airfields were rendered unusable. But Israel could not rely on an aerial attack alone. Just 15 minutes after her fighter jets roared into action, her ground forces confronted the enormous armored enemy that menaced the Sinai. Israel divided its attack force into 3 divisions. All faced heavy tank battles against exceptional odds. The 1st Division, led by Major General Israel Tau, fought its way to El Arish, the fortified capital of the Sinai Peninsula. along the banks of the Mediterranean. By the next morning, June 6th, El Arish was in Israeli hands. Its last guns fell silent the following night, and neighboring Gaza was conquered that same day. Meanwhile, a second division, led by Ariel Sharon, headed for the strategic northern junction of Abu Agila. Sharon confused his entrenched enemy by attacking at night from multiple directions. By mid-morning on June 6th, Sharon had secured all strategic areas. A third reserve division, led by Brigadier General Avraham Yoff, split in two. One half silently penetrated Wadi Hiradin, an undefended natural barrier that Egypt considered impassable. This aided Sharon by preventing enemy reinforcements from joining the battles raging in Rafah and Abu Agila. The other half joined General Tau in a pincer attack against the key high ground of Jebel Litni, where the Egyptians maintained control of their second, deeper defense line. By the evening of June 6, the high grounds had fallen. The afternoon of June 6th found the Egyptian military elite in panic, issuing contradictory orders and abandoning their troops to disorderly retreat. Two IDF divisions raced to the Suez Canal. Their mission was to block off the Egyptian retreat, allowing the 3rd Division to drive the escaping enemy into a trap and preventing any chance of regrouping. On June 7th, Israel's Navy, joined by a paratrooper unit, arrived in abandoned Sharm el-Sheikh on the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. On June 8, IDF forces reached the Suez Canal. By June 9th, the entirety of Sinai and Gaza was in Israeli hands. Egypt had lost its air force and its army, and had been soundly defeated. It promptly signed a ceasefire. The Sinai, however, was not Israel's only front. On the first morning of war, June 5th, as Egypt's airfield lay smoldering, and with its Sinai forces under heavy attack, Egypt lied to Jordan by claiming false victories over Israel. Egypt ordered its ally to attack Israel. At precisely 9 a.m. on the 5th of June, Jordanian planes and artillery bombarded Israeli positions and airfields, and unleashed an inferno against the unprotected civilians of Jerusalem. Israel appealed for Jordan to stay its hand. General Od Bull of the UN's peacekeeping force relayed a message from Israeli Prime Minister Eshkol to Jordan's King Hussein. "We are engaged in defensive fighting on the Egyptian sector, and we shall not engage ourselves in any action against Jordan unless Jordan attacks us. Should Jordan attack Israel, we shall go against her with all our might, and the king will have to bear the full responsibility of the consequences." But at 11 a.m., King Hussein formally rejected Israel's overtures. His reply was blunt: "It is too late. The die has been cast." By 12:30, Jordanian shelling shrieked to the tune of a full-blown assault, causing multiple deaths, almost 1,000 wounded, and a trail of destruction. Once again, Israeli jets tore through the skies, rapidly demolishing the entire Jordanian Air Force, allowing Israel's ground forces to capture key border positions, such as the Kalkilia Junction and Latrun stronghold. After this punishment, Israel waited for the heavily bruised Jordan to reconsider, to no avail. Left with no choice, on June 6th, the IDF met the Jordanian army head-on in the West Bank. The struggle to rescue Jerusalem was bitter and costly, but after 2 days of close combat, Israel captured the Old City. Outside of Jerusalem, the bloodiest battle was the Battle of the Dotan Valley. Israel intended a limited struggle to neutralize long-range artillery fire near Jenin, but the war was unintentionally expanded as the battle spread across Judea and Samaria. On the morning of June 7th, Israeli forces arrived at the Samarian city of Shechem, or Nablus. Its residents mistook the IDF for Iraqi troops and welcomed them, but soon realized their error and resisted bitterly until the city fell later that night. East Jerusalem and the rest of the West Bank fell with little resistance on June 7th. Israel captured Jericho, the Jordan Valley, the Gush Etzion area, and the Judean cities of Ramallah, Bethlehem, Hebron, Tul-Karim, and Chalkidea. Jordan had suffered a crushing defeat. At 8 p.m. on June 7th, Jordan signed a ceasefire. Israel now controlled the densely populated West Bank, although many locals had fled to Jordan ahead of the Israeli advance. Beside Egypt and Jordan, Israel faced one other major menace: Syria. The Golan mountain range was under Syrian control and heavily fortified, turning Israel's towns into sitting ducks. On the first day of war, Syria's air force had attacked Israel, which responded by eliminating its enemy's air force. The following day, June 6, a Syrian ground invasion of Israel was repelled. Licking its wounds, Syria spent the next 2 days raining destruction on Israeli villages from atop the Golan Heights. Israel bled but could not respond. They were up to their necks in the effective destruction of Egypt and Jordan's armed forces. But when those enemies signed ceasefires, Israel turned a sharp eye to the Syrian bombardment of its northern civilians. Years of sporadic shelling had been a primary instigator of this war, and Israel could not sheathe its sword before pointing its blade at Damascus. On June 9th, Major General David Elazar was ordered to storm the Golan. It was literally an uphill battle, to a plateau some 2,000 feet in the air. The mountain bristled with heavy fortifications, minefields, and trenches. After Israel's air force shook the mountainside for 3 hours, its ground forces inched painfully upwards from 5 locations in the northern Hula Valley, exposed to enemy fire all the way. The main attack was towards the town of Kala, where Syrian defenses were weaker due to the impenetrability of the steep cliffs. Sappers cleared mines. Then bulldozers created roads. Then tanks clambered up in single file, accompanied by troops. The invasion took several hours at the tragic cost of heavy casualties, but the strongholds of Kala, Tel Azizat, Tel Fakir, Dardara, and Tel Halel were taken. On the morning of the 10th, Israel captured Banias and Mansara, leaving their path clear to Kenitra, the regional capital and center of Syrian military command, which fell without a fight. In just 1 day of terrible fighting, the strategically crucial Golan Heights was in Israeli hands, removing the nearly 20-year-long threat that towered over northern Israel. With the elimination of the Syrian, Jordanian, and Egyptian threat in just 6 days, Israel not only survived, but tripled in size. The war was won.
All right, that was quite dizzying, huh? A lot happening very quickly. You know, it's very interesting. They've released the, only 5 years ago they put this out. The disclosed the cabinet meetings, the security cabinet meetings in the Israeli parliament, which were top secret up until 5 years ago. Close to 1,000 pages in Hebrew, which is denser than English. And what you see over there is, so the security cabinet is supposed to be the one who authorizes any attack that Israel makes. And what happens is once the war begins, the entire rest of the war is the security cabinet complaining that they weren't first asked and given the chance to vote on something, and they're hearing about it only later. So, so they had a meeting to discuss if we should invade the Golan. When they came to sit down, they're like, you know what, that already started yesterday. They're like, well, no one asked us, it's not right. Anyways, that's how the war happened. They, once they got the green light, the army just went and the generals called all the shots, and that's it. No politicians had any say until it was over. But this is what brings us till today. The war is over, and all of a sudden, Israel, I wish I had a map up here, but you have in your books actually. If you take a look, it's one of the first things you have in your book. Map of Israel. I don't think there's a page number on that page. And this is a very important map. Do you see this? One of the first things in your book. Is there a page there?
Just after the contents.
And you have map of Israel, you have before the war, you see after the war. And there's 4 areas that I want to point out to you. You got that? Okay, so on the bottom, let's go from bottoms up. On the bottom, you have this whole massive area of Sinai. These were the captured territories, right? These are just the territories. You have Sinai on the bottom. That's one issue. Okay, to the left of Israel, you have the Gaza Strip. You see that? Okay, on the right side of Israel, they don't have a line around it, although in the small insert you see it a little bit. Judea and Samaria. Judea and Samaria was considered unique, and there's a reason why, out of all the territories captured, this gets the most attention, because it's most densely populated. You know, the Sinai Desert, there's hardly anything there. The Gaza Strip had some settlements, okay, but not as Judea and Samaria.
Rabbi, what page are you on?
There's no page. It's one of the first pages in the book.
Oh, in the book.
Immediately after contents. And then on the top right, you have the Golan Heights. Okay, so 4 areas: Sinai, Gaza Strip, Judea and Samaria, and the Golan Heights. Israel, interestingly, their position on this, as soon as the war is over, very quickly, they say, you know what? We don't need land. We don't want land. We want peace. So now we have what to bargain with. You want your land back? Give us peace. The Arab nations all had a famous conference. I believe it was in Khartoum, right? Khartoum conference, or Khartoum, however you pronounce it. Not something that Americans are that capable of, okay? But the Khartoum conference, and the Arab leaders came back with the famous 3 no's. No peace, no negotiations, no recognition. A few months later, the UN comes around, and the UN basically creates they frame the issue, which till today we're living with. It's Resolution 242, Security Council Resolution 242. It was actually drafted by an Israeli, and there was a lot of drama around it. You could read up about it, about the exact wording, but they're the ones who come up with this issue, with this. Let me shut off my ringer. There we go. The UN resolution is what comes up with the idea of a 2-state solution. Very simple. 2 people want 1 piece of land. Split it up somehow. Sounds easy, right? On paper, it sounds nice. And so the UN accepts it. It actually, full vote. Nobody voted against it. Nobody abstained. The entire Security Council adopts 242. Israel accepts it. And this becomes basically the accepted, mostly endorsed diplomatic way to deal with this issue. 2-state solution, 1 state for Israel, 1 state, which is called Palestine, the Palestinians. Which, okay, even over there, we can start quibbling from a political perspective. What does that mean? The West Bank didn't belong to Palestine, it belonged to Jordan. Jordan went to war with Israel. So what's this idea of making a new state Palestine? Never was. We could discuss giving it back to Jordan. Okay. But if you look at the wording, which is in the books, I don't want to read it because we have more important stuff to get to. But if you want to read the resolution, it's one of the appendix texts. You could read it. And it discusses this idea. The first item of the resolution is there has to be withdrawal of the Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the recent conflict. Okay? And this goes to 2-state solution. Withdrawal from territories, and they say there has to be an end of the state of war. The Arab countries all refuse this offer. But okay, but there we basically start the story of Israel and the 2-state solution. From after the war, UN Security Council Resolution 242, this becomes the paradigm that the world is working with, which is actually very interesting, that the world really never tried anything else, more or less. You know, for 55 years, we're busy trying to push this. This specific resolution became the whole way we're doing it. Okay. America accepts it. Most of the world sees the only remedy to the problem is in this solution, the 2-state solution. And in the eyes of the world, anything that's being done by Israel, only by Israel, that will in some way hamper the chances of success of the 2-state solution is readily condemned. For example, growing the settlements, right? So this basically becomes the way the world accepts it. If you want to look in your books, there's a timeline right at the beginning of this lesson, timeline of land for peace efforts. And you know, even though this whole timeline looks quite extensive, even this is missing a lot of nuance. Do you see it? So we're back at lesson 4. That's page 124, I think you have these things, right? Page 124? Is there a page number? Or the page before 126?
Yeah.
Page before 126, okay. Okay, now what's been happening since in the past 25 years, in the past 55 years? Egypt comes around, makes a peace deal with Israel, and in 1978, 79, takes till about 81, 82 to be completed. Egypt gives Israel what they want, recognition. Israel gives up the entire Sinai. That's how Sinai goes away. So now Sinai, Israel doesn't own Sinai anymore. They owned it actually for a pretty long time, 15 years. Okay. Gaza, we all know, was it 2004? I think it was 2004, 2005, around then. Five was completed. Ariel Sharon, Prime Minister, I'll actually tell you a fascinating story about that later in today's class. Ariel Sharon unilaterally, which means with no deal, he didn't make any demands back. He just withdrew from Gaza, forcefully disbanded all the settlements, and Gaza is now also out of Israeli hands, returned to the Palestinians, and we all know what's been happening there since. Okay, but the world is still not happy because Israel has not given up control over Judea and Samaria for the creation of a Palestinian state. And less of an issue, less heard about, but still an issue, still contentious, is the Golan Heights. The world doesn't like it that Israel still is sovereign. Okay, there's a lot of nuance to what type of Israeli control there is. East Jerusalem is also part of this whole mess because Israel captured East Jerusalem. That is basically where we are. That brings us till today and on one foot. Right? Sounds right? Am I too off? That sounds right? Okay. Within the Jewish community, worldwide, especially within Israel, you basically have two camps. Two groups. One group says, not an inch. We're not giving up anything. For whatever reason they have, we'll get to reasons soon. But there's one group of people say, we're not giving away anything. And there's another group of people which say, no, peace. It's not right. We have to make peace with the Palestinians. Two-state solution. Now, I want to say from the outset, especially in Israeli society where they're not as polite, like you know the story, there's once an American first time traveling to Israel, they're on the El Al flight, and the stewardess comes over and says, sir, would you like breakfast? He says, sure, what are the options? She says, yes or no. So not as polite there. And they really tear each other apart. And unfortunately, the whole story with Yitzhak Rabin, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, was assassinated by a Jew. So it gets dirty there. And God forbid, we want this class to stay very civil. We don't want to, look at anybody in a negative way. I really do believe, especially within the Jewish community, 99.9% of the people are really coming with good intentions, want peace, want the goodness for the world, in the best interests of the Jewish people as well. But okay, it's a debate, and it is a nuanced issue. So I want to do this with you. Let's take a moment. I want you to really spend 2 minutes on this. Take a pen. If you don't have a pen, there's actually pens back there. Turn to page 128 in your books. We got pens? All right. And I want you to fill out all the lines here, okay? I want you to give 3 reasons why Israel should allow for the creation of a Palestinian state and go forward with a two-state solution. What are arguments for ceding land? And what are arguments against ceding land and why Israel should not give up anything and keep control of everything? 3 reasons. You don't have to agree with the reasons, but I want you to all write down 3 in each, because it's very important that we give ourselves the space to think about it and actually write it down to paper. Okay. Now, I want to go around, and I don't want this to take up too much time. I want to do this very briefly, so with your help, all right? I want to get some ideas on the table, but in one sentence or less, not more. Quickly, let's begin with a few reasons pro. Why should Israel create a Palestinian state? In very few words. Anybody? Peace. You got to make peace. One second. You're saying so two things. One thing at a time. Peace. We got to make peace. So you're gonna sit there and just tell the Palestinians we're stronger, so we get to do whatever we want. No, you got to make concessions for peace. Okay? That's the argument. What else? Yes.
Consistent with 242, which Israel had agreed to.
Oh, we've agreed to it. There's a United Nations Security Council resolution. We've agreed to it. The entire world says this is a good idea. We should go forward with it. Very good. Okay. What else? I'm not saying very good as in I agree with it. I am right now not taking any sides. But let's at least get them on the table. Better relations with the world. Better relations with the world. That's a very important thing. We need support. We want support. We don't want to be isolated. We don't want to have political fallout. Better relations. Very good.
Yeah. How about this one? The neighboring countries will never agree to peace without it.
The only way to get peace is if we give something up. Very good. Okay, that's another reason. So we want peace. We want to live peacefully. Okay. What else?
Economics.
Yes.
Someone said economics.
Economics. Do you mind saying a few more words on economics?
Well, we could be trading. We could do business with each other. It allows people to grow.
You're saying say that we could have economical trading with other Arab countries. You're saying.
Yes.
And even with the Palestinians. By the way, it's very interesting historically.
Mostly talking about the Palestinians.
Mainly the Palestinians. You should just know, historically, this is what I heard. Jews used to do business with Palestinians and happily go into West Bank cities only until the late 80s. Late 80s, it changed. Jews would go there. Who'd you go to? Mechanic. You went to an Arab mechanic in who knows where, in Jenin. Only by the 90s, around the Oslo Accords. That's really where everything changed, which is very significant to realize that. Okay, let's now go. I think we have a few ideas on the table. Let's now go to arguments why Israel should not give up anything.
Peace.
You got to explain yourself.
You know what? Peace through strength.
Peace through strength. You know what? You give in, you look weak, and then you're just inviting for more. They beg for more concessions.
We tried this in Gaza and it didn't work.
Reason number two, we've been there, done that. We're done.
The Palestinian state.
Look, we've given them a chance in Gaza. Didn't happen. But you could argue it. Okay, I don't want to get to arguments. Okay, yeah? We're not arguing. We're just getting ideas on the table. I know. We're holding ourselves back.
People make the claim that Jordan is a Palestinian state.
Some people say, you want a Palestinian state, go to Jordan, go to Syria, go to the whole Middle East is there. You know how to
Sinai.
Go anywhere. I'm saying, go to Gaza. We've literally done that. Which is it's different. There already is. We don't need to create a new one. This never existed.
Jordan was taken away from the original mandate. Two-thirds of the mandate was carved away.
Okay, that's true. Okay, well, part of
the Arabs called Jordan Palestine.
Right.
And then the Egyptians advised the Jordanians, no, call it Jordan, don't call it Palestine.
Right. So maybe as part of the original mandate was to create a Palestinian state. So that's really where. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what are some other reasons? Go ahead. Yeah, Eli.
Yeah, Israel's safety would be compromised in the future, particularly if they gave up the Golan Heights from a standpoint of self-defense. They'd be at a serious disadvantage.
Safety, we are compromising the safety tremendously if we give away these lands. A lot of our defensive depth, it's called, we're going to be losing. Okay.
Well, you say it's our land, right? The emotional connection, what we did on the first day, a lot of that.
On the first class, very good. Then there's like a more of like a religious or an emotional argument, which is it's our land. We're not in Zimbabwe. We're in Israel. This is our land.
And particularly Judea.
And Judea. Oh, so for that argument, doesn't apply so much to Sinai. The Sinai desert was never part of biblical Israel. Judea and Samaria. Now we're talking. right? Just to give away Judeans, right? This is our land, literally. All biblical history happens there. Okay, that's another argument.
You're giving away something tangible, which is land, for something intangible, which is a promise.
Very interesting. What you're giving away something which is very, very difficult to ever take back. Ariel Sharon actually says, we'll give away Gaza. If it ever becomes a terrorist state, we'll just go in and invade it again and take it right back. And we all know what happened since then, right? It's easy to say. So we're asking people for peace, which is just a piece of paper, sign a piece of paper, which tomorrow there could be a new leader, and we don't know what's going to happen afterwards. And we're giving away something so real. So it's not fair.
Well, in the previous chapter, the reasons to attack first were given through scripture, and part of attacking first is controlling the land around our borders.
Oh, so we need to have land, so we need to have defensive depth, which is similar to what Eli was saying. We need safety.
And it's told us in the scriptures. in
Right,
lesson
so
3.
could we invoke that concept, lesson 2?
We'll
Yeah,
have to
very
dis-
good, very good.
We'll have to displace many Israeli citizens.
Oh, so first of all, we have a whole issue that the West Bank is very heavily populated, and nobody mentioned that issue, by the way.
500,000 Jews in 25 communities.
Right, okay, so that's, I don't, Bruce, did you mean that? So we'd have to disband all the settlements, which is always very, very messy. And I'm gonna say another idea, which nobody mentioned yet. There's a very big threat to the democratic state of the Jewish state. What's gonna happen? If let's say we fully annex the West Bank, and now we all of a sudden have a few million Arabs part of our population. They all have a right to vote. It's democracy, right? And then what happens at a certain point, they could have more children than us. And I don't know what the statistics are, but they have a year by at what point, if all the Arabs in Gaza and the West Bank become Israeli citizens, when they will become the majority. And then what happens? That's it.
Voted out.
We're democratically turned into a Palestinian state and not a Jewish state. So everybody's very scared of that. What are we going to do about that? Okay. So here's what I want to do with you. I think we got a lot of good ideas on the table, and I thank you all. I really do for that was a successful run. We're not always that successful. That was really well done, guys. We got a lot of ideas on the table, and we did not get derailed. And I think that was very important to get ideas on the table.
We haven't hit my other 5 points against that.
Oh, okay. I know, we could be, listen. 2 Jews, 3 opinions, even about what type of bagel is the best bagel. We're talking over here about land of Israel. This is what I want to do with you. A few people asked me about this course before the course started, when we were marketing it. They says, course about 6-Day War, is this like a history course? Is this a politics course? Like, what are you teaching us exactly? If I tell you we're going to do a course, like our last course, about Talmudic law, okay, you understand what you're getting. You learn about Talmudic law. Course about Jewish mysticism, that's Jewish. 6-Day War, what's Jewish over here? It happened. There's a war, As we've been seeing for the past 2 classes, all these issues do have a very unique Jewish take on it. And I want to explore this issue from a perspective that I suspect most of you, maybe all of you, have never done before. What is the Jewish perspective, Judaism's perspective, on giving away land? Pro or against? And it could be you're like, I know already what it is. I know what Judaism says. That's easy. But you know what? I actually think it will surprise you.
Get a good price.
What was that? Get a good price, right? That's a good one. You know the story about the 2 tablets, right?
Well, you can see the difference between successful peace when we gave the Sinai, but there were restrictions. We'll do this and you do that.
Right. So Sinai was successful. Jordan, we didn't give anything back, but that was successful.
Well, Jordan had a war with the Palestinians, and Golda Meir was very good friends with Hussein.
So that worked out.
That worked out.
But on the other hand, Gaza didn't work out.
It was
so,
a unilateral decision.
Right.
Gave it away for nothing.
Right. So that should be even better. They should be even more gracious in response to that.
Well, you almost have to put restrictions when you give it. If you do X, Y, Z,
Right.
the piece is off, and we're going to take it back, and you're going to.
Right. So let's see now. I want to explore this with you.
That's Oslo. There were tons of.
Right. You cannot say that we've.
Confidence buildings and XYZs, and you have to do this and you have to do that.
There's been lots of failures, unfortunately. And even West Bank, even we have given away under Rabin, all the area A's, and Israel had to take it back because of the intifadas. Okay, first intifada. Okay, without getting too lost over here, this is what I want to do with you. I want to go on a journey with you, and this class is going to be a journey for the next hour. To really work through what are the Jewish, what are the Torahs, what are the halachic considerations to this question. Let's go through the different areas. We'll discuss it. There's nuance. I think it's going to surprise you as well. And it's not a simple, quick answer. I want you to all understand, have something in depth. This is going to be the schedule of today's class. I want to give you 5 arguments. 5 arguments. I'll present you the argument. We'll discuss it. Some of them will be conclusive. Some of them maybe not. And we'll go on the journey of what Judaism's position is, straight from Judaism itself. This is not going to be my opinion, Rabbi Dubov's opinion. This is, if Moses was taking this questionnaire that we just did. Moses, you're the master of Torah. You taught us Judaism. What does Judaism say? Not politics. Okay, now you could say, well, Judaism is some old archaic system. We're living in 2022, down to earth. There's nitty gritty politics. There's real issues. You want to go to but we'll see. Judaism is actually very down to earth. We'll see. We'll get there. 5 arguments. Argument number 1. Here we go. You ready? Argument number 1. It all begins with a verse in the Torah. Let's start reading. Page 129, text 2a, 1 verse from the book of Numbers. I'll start on my left this time. Pam, go for it. 2a.
You shall vacate the land of its inhabitants and settle in it, for I have given the land to you to inherit.
This is Moses instructing the Jewish people. You're going to go into Israel, vacate the land, and settle it. Simple as that. There's the verse. Is this okay? What's your impression from this verse? What side of the argument do you take with this verse? Pro giving away land or pro keeping it? Or
God gave us that land.
One second. Strictly from this verse. Keep it. It's a clear mitzvah.
Yeah.
Okay, right? It says clearly, vacate the land and settle in it. By the way, there's something called, there's according to Jewish law, there's a mitzvah called Yishuv Ha'aretz, settle the land. There's a mitzvah for Jews to settle the land.
What does vacate the land? Does that mean kick out the people that are there? Is that yeah?
What does vacate mean? Does that mean we should be going today? Kicking people out of their houses? Okay. So it seems to be pretty simple. You open up a Bible, and there you go. You have it says vacate the land and settle in it. Not so simple. Not so simple. You gotta understand context. What does this mean? Is this a commandment for all times? Or was this only a commandment for that generation who was entering the land of Israel for the first time? And there's a big debate about this between 2 13th century scholars, Maimonides and Nachmanides. You know why they're called Maimonides and Nachmanides? Maimonides, his name was Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. His father was Maimon. Moses, the son of Maimon, he's known Maimonides. And Nachmanides, his name was Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. It's actually called the Davides. The Davides. All right. When I write a book, I'll say authored by the Davides. Okay. What do they say? The Ramban, if it has an N at the end, that's Nachmanides, that's the Hebrew, says this is a mitzvah for all times. Let's read that in text 2b. Text 2b from Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, page 130. Go for it, Jeff.
We have been commanded to take possession of the land that God gave to our forefathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and not to leave the land in the hands of any other nation or allow it to remain unpopulated. Thus, God instructed the children of Israel, you shall vacate the land of its inhabitants and settle in it, for I have given the land to you to inherit. The sages greatly extolled the importance of the mitzvah of dwelling in the land. On top of their many lavish praises, they went so far as to say, whoever leaves the land and dwells in the diaspora is analogous to an idol worshiper. It is my contention that all this praise is due to the biblical commandment to take possession of the land and dwell in it. This commandment applied to all generations, And every one of us is obligated to fulfill it, even in times of exile.
Here we go. That's Nachmanides, pretty sharp. According to this, we should all be taking off tomorrow morning. We'll move to Israel. What's that business?
Over there, we better bring our own tents.
Oh yeah, that's true. There's a lot of space there, don't worry. It's quite a lot of land there, which is still undeveloped. You can always go back to Masada, if we run out of space. Okay. This is what Nachmanides says. He says it's a mitzvah for all generations. According to Nachmanides, it would seem he would clearly never allow the thought of giving away land. Giving away land, it's a mitzvah to vacate and settle in it. Okay. Now, practically speaking, according to Jewish law, we have no right to vacate the land in the current status. The preconditions for the Jewish people to start going and going on a war of conquest. A war of conquest is absolutely not on the table, according to Jewish law, without a Jewish prophet, without the Urim V'Tumim, the famous the breastplate of the, what was that? The breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, without a temple. If you don't have a temple in Jerusalem, there's no way to do that. But settle land you could do. And according to Nachmanides, we all have a mitzvah to do it. Maimonides, he's a little bit older than Nachmanides. He says no. Maimonides says he understands the context of this verse as a piece of history. This is not a mitzvah for today. This was an instruction given to the Jewish people in the desert, this generation who's going to enter the land of Israel. Maimonides says it's a beautiful thing to go to Israel, but it's not an obligation. According to Maimonides, maybe you could give away land. Understand? So this is one verse, but you'll see, let's put that up over here, what Maimonides says. Maimonides says it's not a mitzvah, the Rambam. Okay? Rambam. Okay. So the conclusion of argument number one is inconclusive. Depends how you understand the verse. Okay? This is argument number one, and you'll hear this argument being given, that there's a verse, the Torah shall vacate. It's not so simple. I just want to share with you something, because we're going to keep on going through a few different arguments. Judaism and the Jewish style of learning, the Talmudic style, is pretty beautiful. Many times today, if you have a professor speaking about something, he begins with a hypothesis, and then he starts figuring out how to support his hypothesis. So all of his study is based around, how do I support, my preconceived notion? The way Judaism addresses an issue is usually the opposite. We have no clue. Let's just start trying a few different angles. And this angle fails, inconclusive. Another angle, there's another angle. Which one's stronger? So it's a lot more beautiful to just begin. We don't know. Let's just start exploring. Here's one option, but we are left at the inconclusive conclusion. Okay, let's move on to argument number two. Argument number two is another verse in the Torah. Let us go ahead and read it in the text first. It's on the screen already. Okay, text 4a, page 132, argument number two, and go for it, Sheldon. Text 4a.
When your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess, he will cast away from before you many nations, the Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 7 nations that are more numerous and powerful than you. Do not make a covenant with them, nor be gracious to them.
All right, so the Jebusites are coming back, making another appearance in today's class. You remember the Jebusites from last week? All right, here's another verse. Moses gives this instruction to the Jews right before his own death, right before he's sending off the people with Joshua into the land of Israel. And he says, do not make a covenant with them and do not be gracious to them. In Hebrew, v'lo sichanim. Doesn't mean don't be gracious. Don't be gracious. You know what? Don't say hello, don't say goodbye, what?
Don't rely on their good intentions.
Don't rely. So what does it mean practically? It's a little bit vague, don't be gracious. So our sages say something very interesting. The word sichanim, it means don't be gracious to them. But the word sichanim, chanem, is also related to another Hebrew word. And if you know Hebrew, Chaniya. Chaniya means parking. Parking. Don't let them park here. Don't let them settle here. And this becomes a Jewish law, and this was codified into Jewish law, that in Israel, you are not allowed to sell a house or field to an idolater. So let's read then text 4b from Rabbi Yosef Cairo. We're up to you, Jim, page 132.
It is forbidden to sell to idolaters houses and fields in the land of Israel. However, it is permitted to rent out them houses and fields.
Okay, so here we have this little idea over here, that instead of don't be gracious to them, read instead, don't let them settle here. And here we see pretty clearly, the Torah, Jewish law, there's a prohibition of selling land to a non-Jew. You can rent a house, not even a field. That's the verse.
Well, but it says idolaters specifically.
Oh, you're already getting to the nuance over here, okay? It says idolaters. So based on these two texts, text 4a and text 4b, what do you think would be the position of Judaism based on these two texts? On the prospect of giving away land, or no? We gotta hold on to every inch. What did you say? You have to hold on. You're not even allowed to sell it, give it away for free.
You charge a good rent. You charge a good rent.
Rent for a house. Right, rent, but not own. Don't give it away. You have to get it. So it doesn't say that no non-Jews or idolaters are not allowed to live there. You're allowed to rent to them. They can't own this place. You have to own it. That's what it says over here.
No, and also fields was a business of the day. So I'm also thinking fields was you don't want to sell business.
So that wasn't the reason. The reason given in Jewish law is because we need to make sure that the halachic requirements for fields, like the tithings, and there's a lot of Jewish law around the agriculture. I wanted to make sure that the tithings are getting done. But it could be, maybe that was another reason. I'm not sure. Meaning you're able to employ them, but you can't let them own it, maybe. Okay, I don't know. That could be. It's an interesting thought.
Establish businesses. That's another.
Right. You're saying the businesses should be ours and we could hire them. That's it. But that could be one way of seeing this law. Okay, but according to this law, so what Jim just said, you can't sell, don't give it away. Okay, but then there's another thought over here. Yes, go ahead.
I just need to back up a little bit because I'm.
Okay, go for it.
I have a more fundamental question. Because all of this presupposes we know what the borders of that land are.
Oh, okay.
That
Very good
we're talking
point.
about that we can't give away.
So where does it extend
does
to?
Does that include the Golan Heights? Does that include what are we talking about?
That's a very good point.
It is undefined ever.
Right, so if we're talking about the Jewish law and the Torah talking to us about the land of Israel, what are the biblical borders of the land of Israel? So it does not include the Sinai Desert. Very good point. A lot of these arguments maybe will not even include that. Gaza does include. It definitely includes Judea and Samaria, and of course East Jerusalem. Golan Heights, I believe it does. I'm not sure though. Even parts of Lebanon. Biblical Israel goes into Lebanon, pretty deep into Lebanon. And Syria. Yeah. But the borders are known. We do know.
Yeah, it was defined.
Right. There definitely is a map of that. I could get that for you. But let's talk about Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem. Definitely there, right? And anyways, that's usually the hot issue. You'll never really see people,
It included the east side of the Jordan River.
Right, exactly.
Living on the east
Lived
side.
on the east side, that's right. So it's definitely larger than modern day Israel. Didn't include Eilat. Eilat isn't part of biblical Israel. Okay, but then, so on one side, it seems the verse is pretty clear, don't give it away. But what did you say? Look at the wording in text 4b. It says it's forbidden to sell to idolaters. The Palestinians all adhere to Islam.
Wow.
And what's Islam?
Or Christianity.
A lot of Arabs are Christian. I believe most Palestinians.
Actually, it's changed dramatically. In 1948, it would have been about 50% Christian. There are almost no Palestinian Christians.
Now they're all Islam.
They were kind of pushed out.
Wow, okay. So today, practically speaking, we're dealing with a monotheistic religion. They believe in one God. So maybe this doesn't apply to them. You see, it's getting a little bit nuanced over here. Perhaps this doesn't apply to monotheists, which the Palestinian Islams are, but not idolaters. Okay, that's argument two.
Literally means I thought idolater was anyone who wasn't
Some people say that also. Some people say, no, it means everybody. We're just using the term idolaters because most non-Jews are idolaters. This is where we kind of have the debate again. You have to look in the commentaries. But okay, let's move on to number 3. You ready? Argument number 3 is a very simple argument. Argument number 3 is gratitude. Gratitude is a very, very big Jewish value. It's in fact our very identity. What does a Jew mean? Yehudi. Yehudi comes from the word Yehuda. We're named after the tribe of Judah. And the word Yehuda means to say thank you, gratitude. Leah, Judah's mother, gave him that name as praise to God. Hapam Oda et Hashem Oda Yehuda, that's the word. And that's the name we're given because we are a nation that gives gratitude to God. And there's no doubt about it. This argument is the 6-day war was such a remarkable victory. We've seen openly the miracles of God. There's so many, God has given us the gift of so many, after close to 2,000 years of us yearning to be in control again, gave us so many beautiful swaths of the biblical land of Israel. Most times when people give you a gift, they intend for you to keep it. You usually don't tell somebody when they give you a gift, this is wonderful, I can't wait to go to return this back to Amazon, right? You don't tell that to somebody, right? Hey, good gift, good value, I'll be returning it. You don't tell it, you say thank you. It's offensive. It's offensive. God gives the gift of Israel, what are we gonna do? I'll give it away. This argument is not so much like a scriptural, it's more like a Jewish values argument. It doesn't make sense. God gave us Israel, and we're now just going to give it away? That's this argument. This argument would be pro keeping the land. Don't give anything away. We'll figure out another way to get peace, but not. That's this idea. Gratitude to say thank you to God. Yes?
God gave the tablets to Moshe, and for good reason, which he was not punished for, he actually broke them.
So when is it correct to give away a gift? Okay, but again, this is at least an argument. Argument number 4 is the idea of peace. Peace is not just a Jewish value. It's called Darkei Shalom, the ways of peace. Jewish law will implement a lot of novel ideas into Jewish law simply for one purpose only, to maintain peace and to promote peace. And I want to read a little text with you about that. Let's read text 6. From Jewish law, from Maimonides, page 134. Jim, you read it, right? So Leah, go ahead, page 134.
In the interest of maintaining peaceful relations, our sages instruct us to visit the non-Jewish sick, bury their dead, give charity to their poor, just as we do for our fellow Jews. The imperative to be kind to non-Jews is based on the scriptures. For it is written, God is good to all, and his compassion extends to all of his creations. It is written, the ways of the Torah are sweet, and all their paths are peaceful.
There you go. Those last few lines are beautiful. We say this every time we take the Torah out of the ark in a synagogue. The ways of the Torah are sweet. All her paths are peaceful. Peace is a top value in Judaism. And this argument would be, you know what? We've said a lot of nice arguments previously. Gratitude. There's a prohibition against letting idolaters settle the land. There's a mitzvah for us to settle the land. But peace. Maybe we should even compromise that, which is what you're saying. Maybe there's a time where you could even break all those values for peace. Peace is so important. And this would be an argument for being at least open to the prospect of giving away land. It's on the table. We'll do anything for peace. That's this argument. Okay, that's argument number 4. And this argument could be also like a human rights argument or social argument, but it could also be a Jewish values argument. It's a Jewish value. Maybe Judaism itself would feel that the other considerations go out the window if we have a chance to make peace. Okay. So I want to recap with you the 4 arguments before I go to number 5. 4 arguments. You getting dizzy yet or not really yet? You're okay? Argument number 1, there's a mitzvah to settle the land. It was inconclusive, but that's at least the argument. Argument number 2, there's a prohibition against idolaters owning the land. Again, that was inconclusive, but that was at least an argument. Argument number 3 was the value of gratitude. Argument number 4, value of peace. We're doing okay? Let's move on to value number 5. Value number 5 is a very simple value. It is a very simple argument, but as we're gonna see, it's the most significant argument here. Argument number 5 is called safety. Safety or security. And I want to introduce to you to a Hebrew term, or a Jewish legal term, a halachic term. The word halachic comes from the word halacha, which means Jewish law. And the term is like this. The term is pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh. I want you to remember that because I want to start using the Hebrew term for this. I'm going to talk a little bit right now about pikuach nefesh, because this is, we're going to see, is going to be the most significant argument over here. Pikuach nefesh means when a life is at risk. Life and death situation. That's what pikuach nefesh means. Anytime there's a life and death situation, Jewish law puts a stamp on it. And that stamp is, this is pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh is a very, very important idea. Because in the face of pikuach nefesh, Judaism says, throw everything out the window, everything. The best example for this is Shabbos. Shabbos is very important in Judaism. It's not one of the 613 commandments. It's from the top 10. It's on the tablets. Not only top 10, top 5 on the first set of tablets. So Shabbos is very, very important. And Judaism says, pikuach nefesh, Shabbos goes out the window. Literally out the window. Not only goes out the window, if somebody in a life and death situation is starting to skimp around, I don't know if I could do this, it's Shabbos, I don't know, am I allowed to drive a car, am I allowed to call somebody? Jewish law has very harsh words for that. You know, Jewish law is like a legal book. You know, it's not very colorful. There's not commentary there. It's not a piece of commentary in a newspaper. Somebody who has that attitude, who's not sure what to do in a life and death situation, Jewish law labels them a chassid shota, a pious idiot, a pious fool, playing around with lives. Judaism goes out the window in a case of pikuach nefesh. You know, my uncle is not just a pulpit rabbi, but he has a rabbinic authority. You know, he went through the process and he's what's called in Hebrew a rav. He has the authority to give halachic rulings. It was the first week of COVID, not even a week, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. COVID came to Michigan, I think, on a Wednesday. Thursday, we were all walking around on eggshells. Friday, we went into lockdown. What was that?
March 13th.
March 13th, very good. But the day of Purim. Purim night, I remember, I heard that they found, confirmed 3 cases in Michigan. I'm like, oh, fasten your seatbelts, everybody. We've just joined the ride. Friday morning, we went into lockdown mode. And right before Shabbos, Friday afternoon, my Mendel came down with a very high fever. I don't remember the exact number, but it was a scary number. And it's right before Shabbos. We can't call a Rav, a rabbi in New York. It's already Shabbos there. My uncle lives in Tucson, Arizona. He's a few hours behind. I give him a call. I message him, emergency. I need you to pick up the phone. And and I ask him, what do I do? It's Shabbos coming. What do we do? So this is what he told me. He says, Levi, if you feel, if your mental needs to go to the hospital, don't think twice. Get into your car, drive, park your car like a mensch. Don't try to still be keeping Shabbos. And bring him to the hospital. Don't think twice. And then he said, Levi, it's not you who can make the call. Mushki, your wife. When she feels, you don't even argue with her. You get in that car and you drive to the hospital. He says, it's COVID, we don't know. It could be the moment she feels, she's the one who has to make the call. Don't be a smart aleck on her. That's what he told me. And it was beautiful because that's the Jewish value of pikuach nefesh. Not just Jewish value, it's Jewish law. Okay. So that becomes the clincher in this discussion. From a Jewish perspective, you could scream arguments from the rooftop from today till tomorrow. Jewish law does not care about anything that anybody says, even what Judaism itself has to say. If it's a life and death situation, Judaism becomes very focused. And the entire question from the Jewish perspective is, what will save more lives. And by the way, Judaism is not talking about Jewish lives, all lives, Palestinian lives included. Jewish law says, will giving away land save lives? Then give away land. Will it? Oh, that becomes part. Okay, we'll get there in a second. But this is theoretically where Judaism stands on the issue. And all the previous four arguments we've said go to the sidelines. These are totally secondary. They're not even in the picture right now. If retaining the land will save more lives, you have to hold on to the land, even if it's illegal, even if it's really occupied territories, even if it's morally wrong. But if pikuach nefesh, you got to do whatever you got to do, period. That becomes Judaism's position. So, coming to this issue, what do we do? What's going to save more lives? And that's where we get to what Lance said. Well, okay, no one knows. 2 Jews, 3 opinions. 2 Jews, 300 opinions. We don't know. You could look at military experts. One says, you don't want to know how to save lives, we've got to give away land. It's in our security interest. Yeah, go ahead.
That's why we don't have 2 states right now, is because they're concerned about security.
Right, but some people are screaming. Security experts in Israel say,
Long term, that's the only way to save lives. If you have a good negotiating partner, you can rely on it.
you're saying if to give away land, right? So this becomes now the problem. The problem becomes is at least now we know where theoretically Judaism stands on the issue. Whatever we do to say, by the way, that's shocking. A lot of people think Judaism is for sure against giving away land. No, Judaism is actually in a certain way doesn't say anything. It gives us the framework how to make the right decision. But we need to decide over here. The problem is who decides. Some Jews say it's suicidal to give away land. Look at what happened in Gaza. Some people say this, top military officials, top politicians in Israel say it's suicidal that we're not creating a 2 states. So this is where we kind of get to this thing. So who now calls the shot? The wife. Very good. You want to be right or you want to be happy, right? Okay, listen. So we got to dig a little bit deeper because Judaism gives us a formula. Pikuach nefesh, life and death situation. Judaism doesn't just say you got to do whatever you got to do because there's always nuance to a discussion. How do you know? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And it's a big deal for you have to realize for Judaism to say we're giving up on Shabbos. It's a big deal. It's a very big deal for religion to say that. But saying lives are more important. So in a case of nuance, we're not sure. There's many considerations over here. So how do we make the decision? So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into the laws of Pikuach Nefesh. Because Judaism gives us a formula. So we have to kind of insert all the information into the formula, and then Jewish law tells us the verdict based on the formula. So this is across the board. This could be about life and death situation on Shabbos. By the way, Jewish law stamps a woman in labor as life and death. All right, just fun fact. So before we had our first baby, I remember calling up my Rav out of New York and asking him, what do we do if my wife goes into labor on Shabbos? So he gave us but Jewish law says the moment labor begins, this situation just moved into life and death, and you treat it that way. But the formula, what's the formula? So I want to walk through with you the formula in Judaism of how to determine Pikuach Nefesh. Number 1, when it's life and death, and I already mentioned this, all non-Pikuach Nefesh arguments are excluded out of the equation. Pikuach Nefesh trumps over all other considerations, period. Period. You just move them from the table. They're not even secondary. They're not a footnote. They're not there. That's Judaism's perspective. I'll give you a little bit of an extreme example. Imagine somebody has a heart attack. God forbid. The ambulance is called. Then one of the family members say, you know what, don't take them to the closer hospital. Take them to the further away hospital. Because, we're probably going to have to be in the hospital for a few days. They have nicer restaurants by the further away hospital. I'll just go there once. They'll probably kick him out of the ambulance, right? Crazy? You're crazy? Life and death over here.
But if the argument was it's a much better hospital,
That's part of the, okay, that's part of the life and death consideration. That's not or let's say, right, there could be different things. We could say, you know, we don't have money to rent an apartment. Let's go to another one. We already have a house nearby. I don't know, you know, it could be even important arguments. But if it's not life and death, nothing else is considered. That's rule number one in Judaism. Rule number two. Rule number two is, which is a very, very important one. Immediate danger overrides potential dangers down the road. This is a very important thing. You could always think, well, what if we do this now, what's going to happen later? We had this a little bit by COVID, where they were saying, you know, we have enough ventilators right now, but God, you know, at the beginning of COVID, God forbid, the hospital's running out of ventilators. So should we maybe keep people off ventilators now because tomorrow more people are coming? And maybe they're older and will need it more than this person who needs a ventilator today, but maybe less than potentially tomorrow. And Judaism says, when it comes to pikuach nefesh, work with what's right in front of you, period. You don't start bringing in, well, what about tomorrow? What about in 20 years? So here's a little example. It's an extreme example, but sometimes extreme examples are important. Imagine a hospital, okay? We're using a lot of hospital examples over here, but I guess it's part of the theme, right? Life and death. So imagine a hospital realizes that they have subpar treatment. It's not a high quality hospital. And you know, people are dying, that's what happens in hospitals, but they feel they could avoid it. But all the state funding is going to hospitals which are even worse condition than theirs. They're like stuck in between. They're not a good hospital, they're not either a horrible hospital, and they're not getting the funding they need. So you know what? Let's become for 3 months a bad hospital. More people will die. But for the next 10 years, we'll have funding to give the absolute best treatment. In the long run, more people are going to live, even though right now there's going to be some, you know, collateral damage in this 3-month effort to become a bad hospital. Imagine an administration of a hospital saying that. And they're saying this is a righteous decision because we're going to be saving thousands of lives over the next 10 years when we get funded for this grant. But we need to prove we're a bad hospital. What would Jewish law say? Absolutely not. Immediate danger takes priority. You can never compromise the immediate danger because of an even greater threat you perceive or you imagine or you anticipate coming later. That's rule number two, right? So number one, all other arguments out the window. Number two, immediate danger, immediate pikuach nefesh overrides future pikuach nefesh. Number three. What's number three? Number three is, what about if you're not sure? We don't know. And again, Jewish law takes Jewish law very, very seriously. So we can't play around over here. I don't know if it's life and death. It's Yom Kippur. It's Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, it's a mitzvah to fast for 25 hours. Let's say somebody 12 hours into the fast, they're not doing good anymore. You know, there's once a Jew came to synagogue Yom Kippur morning, and he goes to his rabbi and says, Rabbi, I'm really thirsty. I need help. The rabbi says, Yom Kippur, I can't help you. You can't drink. Half hour later, he goes back to the rabbi and says, you don't understand, I'm passing out of here. I need a drink. The rabbi says, no, you can't do it. After a bunch of times, he says, Rabbi, I feel I'm passing out already. The rabbi says, okay, drink a little bit. So the man says, oh, Rabbi, thank you. I promise you next year I won't need herring in the morning. Okay, Yom Kippur. Let's say, you have a question?
I do have a question.
So, you know, so let's finish this out, then I'll get to that. Okay. And you know what, I think I'm gonna finish on time, but if not, you'll have to forgive me, Lance. Okay, no, but God willing. Let's say you're not sure. Let's say you see somebody who's not doing well in Yom Kippur. You see them, they're just not, they look really bad. And you go over to them and you say, you know, do you need help? Do you need to eat? And they say, no, I'm just fine. Another example, Surfside. You know, it's an example that actually happened. The tower collapsed. It's already a few days after and Shabbos. Are Jews allowed to desecrate Shabbos for the search effort? But it's 8 days later. Are there any survivors? Who do you ask? Is a Jew allowed to desecrate the Shabbos? And there's a whole delegation from Israel, so all Jews, are they allowed to desecrate? So these are there. So what do you do when there's a question? So Jewish law is unequivocal about this third thing as well. You have to ask the expert. Who is the expert in this field? They make the determination, and you follow the expert opinion. And this is Jewish law. So Jewish law doesn't say go ask a rabbi. Let's read text 11. Fascinating text over here. I find this fascinating that Jewish law, takes this position. Are we by you, Alan? We are. Text 11, page 139.
If a patient maintains that he or she does not need to eat, but a doctor, even a non-Jewish doctor, insists that the patient must eat, we feed the patient as per the doctor's instructions. This is provided that the doctor is an expert medical practitioner.
So we go call on the doctor. We don't call on a rabbi. In the case of pikuach nefesh, somebody needs to eat on Yom Kippur, and we're not sure. He says, I don't need to eat. If there's a rabbi in the synagogue, the rabbi says, no, I'm looking at you and I'm a doctor and I can tell that you need to eat right now. Jewish law says, you listen to the doctor, the expert. In the case of Surfside, who do you listen to? So there was a whole search and rescue team there. And the head of that whole team says, we've done other search and rescue missions, and we have found people alive even after 8 days being trapped. He's the expert. The moment he said that, Jewish law was desecrate Shabbos. So that's the third thing over here. The third part of the formula, the expert opinion or the expert's opinion is accepted as the final word. And even more interestingly, Jewish law says, let's say there's two doctors, one's religious, one's not religious, but he's a better doctor. You listen to the better doctor, even though he's not religious. It doesn't matter. Life and death, professional opinion is taken, period. Which, by the way, this is also an interesting note. Every rabbi who's guiding a community in Jewish law has to have good contacts, medical contacts, because Jewish law needs professionals to be part of the process in certain halakhic decisions, which is very interesting. Okay. So we have this formula here. Now let's apply it to Israel. Let's apply it to Israel. Number one, there are a lot of considerations. We've spoken about a bunch over here, and many that weren't even mentioned. I want you to turn back. Turn back. Page 128. At the list that you wrote, how many of your items fall off of your list because they're not pikuach nefesh related? How many are still left there?
A couple.
You still have a couple there?
Yeah.
Do some fall off?
Yeah.
Do most fall off? I think most of the arguments fall off. So you're worried about, I don't know, anything. If it's not related to safety, to saving lives, Jewish law says it's not even a consideration. Period. Not a consideration. That's number one. Now I want to do one text with you. Let's do one text and we'll kind of see this, and we'll see this idea. Let's do text 10, which is not a Torah text. It's an article from 2017 from Haaretz, from Shaul Arieli, who was a former colonel, it says over here. All right. This is what he says. This is an op-ed he wrote. Richard, what about you? Text 10.
The commanders, I among them, can see the reality taking form right in front of us. We seek only to warn the Zionist public against the unilateral annexation that the government is initiating. In the name of Messianic nationalism, these steps threaten the Zionist vision of a democratic state for the Jewish people with equal rights for all. In 1967, the government annexed 70 square kilometers of East Jerusalem, on which 69,000 Palestinians lived at the time, constituting just 26% of the combined city's population. By 2015, these numbers had reached 320,000 and almost 40%. Because of Jewish migration from the city, because of its many tensions, within 2 decades, Israel's capital will clearly become a city with a Jewish minority. As Palestinians change their policy and decide to take part in local elections, the mayor and most of the city council will be Palestinian. Much of the same would happen with United Israel if we succumb to the annexation longings of Javier Hayudis, Naftali Bennett, and Bezalel Smotrich. At the time of annexation, the proportion of Jews would be about 60%, but within 15 years, the country would have an Arab majority. We would wake up into the reality that David Ben-Gurion warned about in 1947, even before Israel existed. There could be no stable and strong Jewish state so long as it has a Jewish majority of only 60%.
So he's giving there's a lot of arguments over here. First of all, it will threaten the Zionist vision. It will threaten the democratic state. We're going to lose the majority vote. And, who knows what's going to happen then. Are these not good points? These are very good points. These are very important points. Politicians are paid the good money. Are they paid well? I don't know, whatever. Politicians are paid to lose sleep over exactly these questions, as well as political fallout. But if we want to run all the data through the Jewish formula, I don't care how important your consideration is. Life and death, all other considerations fall out. So from the perspective of Jewish law would say, we'll deal with this tomorrow. We'll deal with this next week. It's not on the table now. Not on the table. Let's move on to number 2. Next issue is that immediate danger overrides potential danger. I'll tell you a little story. Without going too much into the history, Ariel Sharon started this in 2003. It's a dramatic piece of political history because Ariel Sharon, he was a top celebrated Israeli general, and he was known as a hawk. He loved fighting. And he was known as somebody, the moment you let him fight a little bit, he went all out. He was always into attacking. He was very aggressive. He was a war hawk. He was not a dove in any sense. He started, and his whole when he was voted to prime minister, he had a very right-wing bloc. No giving away land, tough on the Palestinians. He took back the West Bank. Comes 2003, and he says, I'm unilaterally giving Gaza back to the Arabs. Nobody could believe, Ariel Sharon, you're nuts? What happened? His entire bloc fell apart, and he reformed the government with the left side. He pushed it through the Knesset. He refused to talk to anybody about it. It was a crazy thing. A lot of his top military and security advisors resigned because of it, but he did it. It was a crazy. He said, I'm doing this no matter what. Nobody can convince me out of it. I don't want to listen to anybody. He refused to meet with anybody. One of the few meetings he gave, I heard this from my uncle. My uncle's a Chabad rabbi in Charlotte, North Carolina. His name is Rabbi Yossi Groner. His father was one of the Rebbe's personal secretaries and aides, Rabbi Label Groner, just passed away a year or two ago. He was in Israel at the time on a visit, and all of a sudden he hears that his father is coming to Israel. He calls up his father, says, why are you coming to Israel? His father wasn't really somebody who traveled a lot, he was already a little bit in his older age. He says, I'm meeting with Ariel Sharon. Ariel Sharon had a very deep and long relationship with the Rebbe, and he agreed to meet with 3 Chabad leaders to discuss with him the issue. One of the few times he agreed, and if you go on the government press archives of Israel, there's pictures of this meeting. So Rabbi Label Groner, who was one of the Rebbe's aides, flew in for the meeting. And they told Ariel Sharon what's going to happen, and we're just bringing the enemy closer to us. It's going to endanger Jewish lives. What did Ariel Sharon say? He says, you think I'm an idiot? I know that. I know exactly what's going to happen. I know this can turn into a terrorist base and there's little rockets at us. But he says, but I want to shut down the whole argument, the validity of the argument of a Palestinian state. He says, watch, I'm going to give them Gaza. They're going to make it into a terrorist hub. And what I want is that for the next 25 years, nobody's even going to have the chutzpah to utter the words, two-state solution. And Rabbi Groner argued that the world hates us enough that even if that happens, they'll still want us to make a two-state solution. And he says, no, he's certain that he's going to do this. Minimum 25 years, the world's going to shut up on that whole suggestion. Okay, Ariel Sharon was a big strategist. You can't say it's a bad strategy. Let's give them a little piece of land, and the whole world will see what's going to happen. What's the problem? He's violating this rule. Immediate danger, let Israel come into danger now, but at least we'll avoid a greater danger later down the road. You don't get to do that. It's not this, right? By the way, this story I don't think is published anywhere. This is first-hand account, no books. I heard this straight from my uncle, so it's a very interesting anecdote. I don't think it's published anywhere. Number three, whose opinion do you take according to Jewish law, life and death situation? Only the professional. Who's the professional when it comes to Israel's security? Military professionals. The generals. Really, it's the generals. The moment somebody is coming with a little bit of a political leaning, according to Jewish law, he's disqualified. Moshe Dayan writes a lot in his memoirs. Moshe Dayan was the defense minister in the Six-Day War. And he was talking about the power struggles he was having with the generals. And he describes exactly this. He says, the generals, they have a single vision. We're here to protect Israel. We're going to go and make good borders. He says, I also have to take into consideration what's going to happen after the war, the political fallout, the financial fallout. And he's writing about how he kind of has to protect the whole situation. What's the Vatican going to say? He writes about all these considerations. From Jewish law, that is, he's disqualified, Moshe Dayan, even though he was a general in his own thing. By the way, if a doctor would start giving medical advice, but he'll also start giving political advice together with it, disqualified as well. Expert has to be devoted to this formula. Tell us if it's pikuach nefesh. Don't bring in any other arguments. Tell us what the immediate danger is and we'll address it. And focus on your expertise and don't bring anything else in. This is the Jewish formula to determine what to do in the land of Israel with a two-state solution. Practically speaking, at least the way things stand now, if you look at the current situation, and if you look at what the military professionals say when they don't bring in any other considerations and they address the current danger, it seems very in favor of not giving away land according to Jewish law. In a certain perspective, if you look at this entire picture that we're painting over here, Jewish law actually says, you know, we don't have any position, but we have a formula. Whatever the formula says, that becomes Jewish law. If miraculously, magically, I know you have a question, I'll get to it in a second. If miraculously, magically, things turn around and the safest thing will be to give up land, you know what Jewish law would say? You gotta do it. Give up East Jerusalem. Give up Tel Aviv, whatever. Peace, pikuach nefesh, gotta do whatever you gotta do. Understand? Let's read, and I just want to point this out. Take a look at page, this is one of the, and I'll read one military text with you, which is true to this formula. Take a look at page 142. This is one of the biggest arguments, the security, the safety, the pikuach nefesh arguments, that the security experts in Israel say, if we create a Palestinian state in the West Bank, Israel at its waist is what's called, at its thinnest point is only going to be 8.8 miles. The Michigan 5 down Maple Road is closer, is further. Can you imagine if there was an invasion at 7:30 p.m.? Our enemy's border was the Michigan 5, the M5, right at the edge of West Bloomfield. Can you imagine that? How quick would it take for them to get here? And here's the end of our territory.
Depends on traffic at Orchard.
Right. We wouldn't even know about it.
From the heights in Judea.
And the Golan Heights, like we saw.
No, that 8.8 mile width, is talking about when you're standing in the heights of Judea, you can see Tel Aviv.
You can see Tel Aviv?
So narrow.
So I want to read with you one text over here, text 9b, page 137, and this really does seem to be, and again, at this point, according to Jewish law, I as a rabbi lose my voice. I'm not a military expert. I know nothing about defense. So a rabbi will defer to the consensus amongst military experts who are following this formula, or giving us the data for this formula. This seems to be the consensus of that. Text 9b, page 137, and we'll wrap up right after this. So go for it, Shana.
Regarding the question of Israel's borders, from a professional military viewpoint, an Israeli withdrawal to pre-1967 lines will endanger Israel for the following reasons. Israel will not be able to defend itself against a future conventional military threat. Considering the current situation in the Middle East, no one can guarantee that such a threat will not materialize. Israel's ability to prevent the destruction of its national infrastructure in the event of missile attacks will be greatly reduced, and its retaliatory capacity will also be significantly restricted. As a result of these two weaknesses, the likelihood will increase that Israel's enemies will utilize their newfound advantage to attack Israel in one or both of these ways. security buffer zone beyond the border barrier is a vital component of border security, increasing the barrier's effectiveness and preventing terrorist infiltration.
These are all pretty obvious points, and Gaza has taught us this case as well. But this is not like some idealistic position. We can't give away land from this perspective. Rather, Judaism is saying, here's a formula. We know that Pikuach Nefesh trumps everything. Whatever the current situation is, whether it's 1967, whether it's 2022, whether it's 2072, whatever year it is, whatever situation it is, Israel, not Israel, run this formula through, and that's what you follow. I want to conclude with one final thought. You have a quick question?
It'll sidetrack that.
Okay,
Class
so
after class.
then we'll do it in 2 minutes. So people hear this, and they say, okay, all right. So first of all, it could be that you've already had a strong suspicion that Jewish laws positions don't give away land. But I think there's a certain freshness, and a very practical perspective in how Judaism gets to that perspective, gets to that conclusion, which is very practical. There's a formula. It's not just some, fundamentalist type of hardline. Oh no, we're religious. We're not doing nothing. It's very down to earth. Actually, I want to also read another text with you. You know what? One more text. Let's read text 12. And this is from a rabbi. He was a Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. His name was Rabbi Avadia Yosef. The funny thing about this text is that Rabbi Avadia Yosef was pro two-state solution previously in his life. He was an Orthodox rabbi, right? Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. And he was all into the peace deal. But at some point, 2003, right before the Gaza withdrawal, he finally turned around. And this is what he says. Text 12, page 143, Lance.
To our honorable brothers residing in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, may God be with you, and may you be blessed with eternal peace. I wish to clarify my position on the matter of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. As I've explained in the past on more than one occasion, the halachic ruling that I issued in the past regarding the permissibility of returning land for peace, is no longer relevant given the present circumstances. I had intended, only and purely, that ceding territory is permitted if it leads to authentic peace, one in which Jerusalem and its neighboring areas would dwell in peace and harmony. But we now see with our eyes that, to the contrary, giving away territory from our holy land puts lives in danger. It was not for this peace that we hoped and prayed. Therefore, the Oslo Agreement is null and void. I am at peace with them. Though I speak of peace, they come to wage war. We have no one on whom to rely other than our Father in heaven.
So this is just an interesting text. It's a rabbi who was notorious. I'm not saying that in a negative way, but he was very famous for being a very famous rabbi who was really going for and a lot of the right-wing Jews and the pro-settlers were so upset at him. But he felt that maybe there's a chance for peace over here. But after a few decades, he retracted that. Here's my final thought. People want to know. So what's the end game? What's the end game? We want to make peace. Even in Israel today, there's the Israeli youth are so tired. Another war, another thing. It's over. Let's make peace. Let's just do it and over with. So you say through this class, and halacha says, save lives. Whatever saves more lives, that's what we got to do. And in the current situation, that does seem that it is that the conclusion is based on military security experts following this formula. It seems that the conclusion would be don't give away land. So what now? More terror, more. How do we make peace? And I want to conclude just with a final thought, which is a bit of a sobering thought, but I think it's a very important thought. It's a funny thing that we set the bar, like the immediate bar. The low bar is at full peace. One of the sad realities of this world, according to Jewish tradition, we live in a time of exile. And things will only get fully peaceful and fully rosy only when we enter the Messianic era, only when Mashiach comes, only when there's the era of redemption. We're not there. Part of the early Zionistic dream, we'll be talking a little bit about this next week, which is another very controversial class, was this a little bit of a utopian vision. We're going to have our own country and everyone's going to love us and no more anti-Semitism. And I think it's a lot of like maybe part of that early dream. Maybe we could really get rid of anti-Semitism. Maybe the whole world could really stop hating us. That made this like false illusion, like, we're gonna get to peace. We have to realize, no. Peace is when Mashiach comes. We have to do whatever we can until then to try to make the best circumstances. And that includes, there's a fast, I'll tell you in a second, that includes treating Arab and Palestinian citizens or Arab Palestinians who are under Israeli control well. I told you this about the smacks. Unbelievable, you can listen to it online. Frank Lautenberg, before he was a senator, when he was the president of the UJA, had a meeting with the Rebbe in early 1970s. It's all recorded. And private meetings with the Rebbe were very rarely recorded. It's a very unique thing to hear a real. And they're talking a lot about policy in Israel and about UJA helping, funding Israel. And the Rebbe says, Israel cannot deny Arabs or Palestinians the rights that they give to every single other citizen. You got to treat them well. There's a whole dilemma. Should we do stipends for large families and then we're just going to encourage the Palestinians to have more kids? The Rebbe's position was absolutely. It's a mitzvah from the Torah for Jews and non-Jews to have children. So the point, we definitely have to try to create the best atmosphere where Palestinian wants to be peaceful. They should know that they could be peaceful, and Israel should treat their citizens well. But complete peace, that's not even within our hands. What is within our hands is to protect lives the best we can until Mashiach comes. May peace be in our days. And with that, we conclude today's class. There's even more to say. And I want to tease you all that this whole class, if you want to throw a massive monkey wrench into today's class, read Appendix D, text 19A and text 19B on page 161 and page 162. And today's whole class needs to be reassessed. And even, we have at least conclusion number one. But conclusion number two is we still have more to go. But that is a Jewish position on the two-state solution. So number one, I want to encourage all of you. I'm not going anywhere. We could do some more questions and more discussion. And next week's class is called Israel in Perspective, Viewpoints on the Land's Identity. Another fascinating class, again controversial, but wonderful topic next week. Thank you all for joining. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you all next week.